Welcome to Julie Whitney Scott Presents Let's Talk Theater, a Mind for God production sponsored event, heard only on WGRN LP 94.1, the Green Renaissance Station. Let's talk theater. So happy to be able to present to you guys on Julie Whitney Scott Presents Let's Talk Theater, Talib, Andre, and Kristen Marr from Uprising Productions. You may remember Talib from coming here to Columbus, Ohio's Black Theater Festival, bringing his Nobody's Famous stage play. He now has a new person that helps him with his production company. And I just want to, without further ado, have first welcome you, Talib, and ask you to just tell us a little bit about Kristen, and then go back to telling us about how you two are going to shut up, stop.
Hi, Miss Julie.
I
It is great.
love this part of recording.
Yes. It is great to reconnect.
Are the best.
It is so great reconnecting with you. Definitely. We are definitely humbled when we saw the invitation to come and be a part of the show. You were one of the first people to believe in us, to invite Uprising out to the 5th annual Columbus Black Theater Festival. We were so honored to come and be a part of that. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I have my partner in crime, definitely my little, my sibling in theater, Christian Marr, definitely our company manager, helps to keep people together. Sometimes when I am not, keeps me together as well. So depending a lot on Christian. So I'll let Christian go ahead and speak for a minute. What's up, Christian?
Hi, everyone. I am honored to be here. I'm honored to be a part of Uprising. I believe in it. Listen and hear and keep your eye out for Uprising because we are on the rise.
Mm-hmm. Only way to go is up.
Okay.
Well, tell our audience a little bit, Taylor, about you. You are the playwright, founder of
Yes.
Uprising, are you?
President. Yes.
So let's spend a little time right now of you telling people what made you decide, a Black man, to not only write, but to do a theater company. Because, you know, it's acceptable to be a writer sometimes, but it's not too acceptable for Black men to talk about, you want to be in theater? So talk about that a little bit and tell us, how did that come about? And how did it come about?
Right, definitely. I've always had like an entrepreneurial spirit that was instilled in me from very early on in my life. I've come from a theater of artists, so we had to make money on our art. So my grandmother was a singer and a performer. I had some uncles who were musicians, always playing for people. You know, I grew up in Philly. I say I'm Philly born, New York bred. So my family was very connected in the Philly scene, the Philadelphia Sound, Gamble and Huff, Patti LaBelle, Elbow and the Blue Notes. Yeah, they were very connected. So those are people that I grew up around. So I always had like an entrepreneurial mentality growing up that was always in me, right? So early on in life, I had the opportunity to be a part of a recording gospel choir during my teenage years, going all around the world, all around the country, singing, recording albums. Steve Middleton, Unity and Praise. And our mentor was Hezekiah Walker. So that was a great experience early on in life, being mentored by like the greats, right? Not only as an artist, but also as a businessman, because a lot of artists, they die and they die broke. Right? So understanding finances and being responsible with your finances, right? There's something called corporate responsibility when you run a business, right? You have to be about the business of your business, right? In order for it to flourish, right? So getting back to how Uprising came about. So like I said, my family being always into the arts, might have been about 18, graduating high school. And for my graduation gift, my mom took me to see I Can Do Bad All By Myself, which was Tyler Perry's first production, right? Went to go see that because his next one was Diary of a Mad Black Woman. But I Can Do Bad was his first play that toured at the Merriam Theater in downtown Philly. So I went, and then after the production was over, me and my mom, we were kind of like, I told you we were kind of like groupies. We knew a lot of people. She knew a lot of people. So we were kind of just like hanging around the theater, and I didn't know why. Like I was ready to go. So we were hanging around, and then she was like, go ahead down there to the stage. Mind you, the theater's empty. And she's like, go down there. I'm like, why am I going down to the stage? So I go down to the stage and I'm sitting there and she's up in the back, like with the tech people, and they're like talking. And I'm sitting down there at the stage, like, what is going on? And then this 6'7" person kind of walks out from the wing, and it's Tyler Perry, right? Yes, it is Tyler Perry. And I was just kind of like stuck, and I was kind of like in awe for a moment, like, is this really happening? Still don't know how my mother organized this or how, like I said, we were connected, so I still don't know how she did it, right? But he and I just talked, right? We had just like a conversation like we're doing right now about theater. And I remember asking him, I was like, how did you start this company? And what he told me was, and what I will never forget to this day, why Uprising exists to this day, he said, go get your education. He said, get your education. Understand if you want to get into this business, understand it through and through and through, right? Because if you want to start a company, you may have to be a company of one. Luckily I don't have to do that. I got Christian, right? But you may have to be a company of one, right? And early on, I had another business prior to having Uprising. I had a music production company called Chaotic Entertainment. And I was a shop of one. It was more of a sole proprietorship. And I was a shop of one, right? And we did Chaotic did a lot of good work. But what I learned from Chaotic was you got to be careful about what you name your business. What you call stuff, right? Because I called it Chaotic, and at the end of it, when I finally like wrapped it up prior to Uprising coming into existence, it was a lot of chaos, right? So that's why I was like, all right, with the second venture, we're gonna call it something different. But Uprising was kind of born out of the mess. I'll just call that became Chaotic in the end. So that's Uprising was kind of born out of that, and that's why we chose the Phoenix as our symbol, right? That constant rebirth and getting better. That's what that symbol of.
Kristen, it's your turn now. Could you, hey, how did you get here?
So I've always wanted to be in a performance setting. Growing up, I always was singing. I was always dancing. I was always dramatic. I remember my mother took me to audition for The Lion King. And it was so packed full of people. And each cut, they called my name. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So me and my mother we're in the final room, and it's like maybe 10 kids and 10 parents, and they call all of us in, and we do the final thing and they only called 2 people. And my name was not called. And I was heartbroken. So walking down the street, I'm looking in the mirror, and my mom sees how heartbroken and distraught I am. And she stops and she goes, wait, you beat like 500 people, right? That's a celebration. And we went and got some kind of food, and it was an amazing experience, because all I could think of, I didn't get it. And then my mother was like, wait, no, you didn't get that last call, but you were good enough to make it to the end. So that was so inspiring to me, because it told me to keep fighting. Like, you might not get this one, but the next one, that's yours. And I went to Cheney University. I went to Talent Unlimited High School. I used to go to Black Spectrum Theater Camp. And then I went to Cheney University, and that's where I met Talib. And we worked on a couple of plays together. He graduated. And then when I got back to New York, he called me up one day, and he was just like, what you doing? And we came, we chatted. He said he had this idea. He asked me to come audition. I auditioned. When I tell you Nobody Famous, after reading Nobody Famous, I knew that this was where I needed to be.
Taylor and Kristen, right now we're living in a society where there's a lot of division
in regards to Black Lives Matter. And as theater companies, I feel that as Black theater company, we have an obligation to be voices in that. And in our country right now, we have a lot of division on what people think Black Lives Matter should be and where it should focus on. And because of that, we still have a lot of division in our communities as Black people. One of the things that I see a lot of is that there's a division of, well, if we're dealing with Black Lives Matter, we should only be dealing with Black Lives Matter in the form of police brutality. Okay. Then you have the other realm where people say, well, but it also started in regards to the LGBT community. We have rights. And then, of course, you have the seniors who really are not even represented there, but I'm going to represent them because I'm one of them all, that also fit into this, hey, I'm Black and my life matters too, you know? So why don't we, let's start with you, Kristen. How do you see Black Lives Matter right now? And how can we, as Black theater companies, get it across on what it is you think we also need to add to that piece?
So I see the Black Lives Matter movement in this day. I think that it has kind of been taken over by those who don't believe that equality is for all, if that makes sense. Like Black Lives Matter is inclusive. There was no separation in any way. It's looking for justice for all of the atrocities that Black people may have faced from their neighbors, the police, anybody in the world. It was fighting for that, seeking justice for that equality and that wrongdoing, that justice for that wrongdoing. And what has happened now is some people have refused to say someone's name, honor someone's trauma, honor someone's story, or just, kind of like shoo it, like, oh, that's not important. And I think the division, the new hashtags that are made are kind of like trying to remind everybody, like, we should be together, but no one wants to really have this conversation. So it's really hard to educate someone on how, if my life doesn't matter to you, then how is your life supposed to matter to anybody else? How is our lives supposed to matter to anybody else? If we can't care about our own lives in our community, how can it matter to anyone else in their community? So that's what I feel like, that's what these other hashtags or new calling outs are. I think that's what it is, trying to remind the Black community that we're in this together. And you may not say my name or my grandmother's name or my sister's name or my brother's name, but I'm gonna say it. And if you don't acknowledge that Black Lives Matter for all of them, I'm still gonna march with you and I'm gonna still call their name, because that's what's happening. It's just sad, because I went to the Al Sharpton march in DC, and I had my Black Lives Matter sign, and I was walking and I was pushing it, I'm pushing it, but I also had a shirt for, so my trans sister was murdered, and she lived in Philly, and it was just really traumatic hearing that story. So I wanted to represent and honor her. And people were asking me, oh, who is that? Who is that? Because they didn't know the story. And that's because it's not pushed out there. Like, these stories aren't retweeted or shared or voiced as hard as these other, these men, like even the Black cisgendered women that face these hardships. Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland are not the only ones. They are not the only ones, but it feels like they are the only ones we really know.
So definitely, I understand that the Black Lives Matter, what their agenda was police brutality. Like, I understand that that's their agenda, right? But as Christian said before, like, how can we expect other cultures or anybody else to care about us if we don't care about us ourselves? And that's the point that I was trying to make. Yes, we have the Stop the Violence movement, which is for Black on Black crime. Yes, we have the Black Lives Matter, which is police brutality. And yes, we have movements for, gay rights and queer rights and things like that. We have all these different pockets. But as Mother Maya said back in the day, we still are these yet to be United States, right? And that's one of the reasons that we have all these atrocities that are going on right now. That's why one of the reasons why we see all these different protests. But I'll take it a step further. We need to look at ourselves as global citizens, right? You talked about what theater companies can do, right? And what Black theater companies can do. Yes, we want to make a difference in our own communities, but the way we make a difference in our community is by looking at what's going on around the world. And I say that because what's going on in Nigeria right now, that should inform what's going on here in the United States. I'm not sure if y'all know what's going on in Nigeria right now and all the atrocities, and basically they're fighting back against the government right now. It's the same thing that's going on right here in the United States. I think back to the apartheid and the segregation days. In Africa, they were fighting apartheid. United States, we were fighting segregation. And then we learned from them. And then we did it here in the United States, right? So we need to think of ourselves on more of a global level, see what's going on around the world, and then how can that inform what's going on in our own communities?
So keeping that in mind, what is our role in presenting works that will show what we're talking about? What is our role in making sure that we're developing new works that make sure that people's names are heard? What are you guys doing, with your production company? And what do you see? And I want you to talk about this, Taylor, your responsibility, because as we saying, how are we going to make sure that people know what's going on? Theater has always been up the forefront of social change, social justice, being able to speak out about things that are unjust. Of course, we want to have good times too, but I'm talking about in relationship to, as you said, not only what's going on here, what's going on in Haiti, what's going on everywhere, what's going on in Puerto Rico, okay? What's going on everywhere in regards to our people, our race, descendants of Africa. Okay, so where do you see and what can we do, Taylor?
So with Uprising Productions, right? I mean, the name alone, Uprising Productions. I wish I was able to put the logo up right now. Our logo is a phoenix, right? And what the phoenix does, after so many years, it dies and then it's reborn, right? So it's always this idea of like rebirth, constant renewing, continuous improvement, trying to get better, right? So in thinking about the two productions that Uprising has done, right, they both spoke to different issues going on in the Black community, right? The first one, Nobody Famous, dealt with women in a prison, right? And we were talking about fighting for women's rights. And that's the one that you brought out to Ohio, right? And there were 5 different women, they were in prison, and we were basically fighting, showing the experiences like Christian, like both of you have alluded to. There are many other people other than Sandra Bland and other than Breonna Taylor, right? Breonna Taylor's situation hadn't happened when we did Nobody Famous. But there have been tons of women who have, been dealt atrocities, right? And we use that to try to speak to those women and bring awareness to what's going on in the prisons, and that the prison population is increasing for women, and that women are experiencing the same thing that men are, but it's not talked about as much because they're women. So just continuing that same thought. So going from Nobody Famous, back in 2019, what's this, 2020? Yeah, 2019, Christian. 2019, we were blessed with another production that I wrote called Talib Andre's Second Chance, right? And the Second Chance, as I was talking about before, thinking about what goes on globally in order to inform what goes on in our own communities and make impact in our own communities, that play dealt with a Black family, right? And each person in that family being given an opportunity to do something different than they had been done before, right? And it was about love. And I think that's what's going to help to heal the world. right? It's about love. We talked about the 4 different types of love, right? But in that, it's all about love, right? And if we look at the world through love, and if we channel our movements and everything in love and togetherness, I believe that's what's going to heal the world. And I believe that that's what we tried to bring to life during that show. That's what we're trying to do as a theater company, to bring these things to life. And if you look within yourself, right, that's what theater does. Theater allows you to hold up a mirror to society and for you to look at it and say, what can I do in order to change this?
Mm-hmm. Christian, you said earlier, and you brought up a very good point about the fact that we don't see a lot or hear a lot of names of people who matter. You know, people that have also been here and done things, people that are no longer here, people that just seem to be pushed to the wayside and not mentioned at all. Why don't you elaborate a little bit more on that and talk about your experiences and what it is you would like to see us do and show and present in theater as production companies?
So like I was saying, there's a lot of stories that impact the world and our culture and the things that we do, and we don't realize it. We don't see it, and that's because we haven't heard the story, or maybe we're not a part of that circle or something like that. So it would be amazing to see some of that magic that naturally happens in those circles be portrayed to a play. There's a lot of things that are on television and streaming shows now that are very inclusive, and they're really breaking the glass ceiling and changing how the narratives on all types of characters and how they're viewed. But in theater, I haven't really seen a lot, like Rent. Whew. So Rent, right, okay? Rent is my musical Bible, my musical theater Bible, because it was one of the first plays I've seen, heard the soundtrack. Musicals I've seen and heard the soundtrack. And it just opened my eyes. I'm a little child, so I don't know nothing, but it resonated with me. I saw myself on stage. Like, I was Angel, like, and I didn't know that I was Angel, but I was, it was crazy. So, but after Rent, it's kind of like, I mean, then you had Avenue Q, but that wasn't really, that was more on puppets. And then I just didn't really see a lot of diversity. We did see mainstream, like there were like white queer, black queer, but then Kinky Boots came, and Kinky Boots just rocked everything. I have not seen it, but I saw I think Ving Rhames movie, and that was hilarious to me. So, and I loved it. But I think we need more, we need more natural, real stories, not these people, oh, I'm a male, I'm a black male by day, and then by night I turn into this magical, like that's a great story, but there's actual genuine stories of people that are struggling and living the life of looking like that through 24/7 throughout the day, and then having to get a job and going to school and dealing with life. And think about not only how many people that can touch who identify with that head on, but then you can start to see how connected and how closely you can share stories and experiences. So it then links you to, I'm kind of like that person. I never thought I was like that, or that we would have anything in common, but I'm like that character.
Yeah. Christian, I think it's a very important statement you said earlier, which is why we as theater companies who produce works have to remember. It's like you said, when you saw Rent, you were like, wait a minute, is that me?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what theater does, and which is why it's so important, you know that we have these stories, okay? It's because people get to see themselves.
Exactly.
And that's why I started the Columbus Black Theater Festival. I started the Columbus Black Theater Festival because I was like, I want to see me. I just want to see a weekend with Black actors, written by black playwrights, directed by Black people. I was like, we need that here in Central Ohio.
We need, from a producer and director and like a businessman standpoint, one of the things I love about having Christian on my team is when I'm thinking of writing roles for Christian, I can look at it from so many different perspectives, right? And like the casting process, I'm like, okay, this role requires a more masculine vibe. This role requires a more feminine vibe. And then Christian and I always go back and forth and have that kind of discussion about like where Christian sees and wants to be in the world, right? And then we kind of go from there. So I like having someone in the company and kind of leading the company, definitely with me, because that shows inclusion when we bring other people in, right? But then also, like I said, from a producer, director, writer standpoint, it just allows me a lot of flexibility when I'm thinking about like roles and writing for Christian. It's different directions. So.
Yeah, and for you, Taylor, what in Christian, what do you see? Where are you going to go? And have you been able with this COVID stuff to do anything outside of virtually? Because New York was hit.
Well, the first big one, Broadway's closed until June of 2021. So other theater companies kind of take their lead from the Broadway League. So if Broadway's not open until 2021, a lot of the other smaller houses and things are not opening prior to that. So that's one thing. So it'd be kind of using like studios or community centers to produce works, or like filming the work and then putting it online. But that also requires that that you have COVID sanctions in place, right? And then it requires people to quarantine, and there's so many different regulations, so many different processes that you have to think about now, which makes things a lot harder. It doesn't make it impossible, right? Because in the impossible, there's possibility, right? So and you just have to work around it, right? And make it work for you and your company and what the needs are. Of course, less is better, right? If you can have less people, if you can build your schedule to have just certain people in a scene at a time where you don't need the entire cast, entire production team, that makes it definitely Zoom calls like this for like line rehearsals kind of work. Second Chance, the show that we did back in 2019 was supposed to tour this year. And that tour got like totally canceled, right? We weren't able to do that, which really hurt us, set us back a little bit. But now Christian and I are thinking about ways to keep that work going, but just in the virtual format. So that's where we are right now, just trying to figure out how to keep that work going and keep everyone connected. So.
What would you like to see?
To be honest, I would love to see Uprising just be the leader and the forefront of that theater for Black community. It's writing, and I see it going to the sky. And then I also see Uprising becoming a lot more than just theater. It is gonna be film. It is going to be music. It is going to be production. It is going to be writing. It is just going to be that Black empire.
Thank you for joining me, Julie Whitney Scott, your producer and host of Let's Talk Theater, a Mind for God Productions sponsored event, heard only on WGRN LP 94.1. For the full video interview, go to my Julie Whitney Scott Facebook page.